SuperTalk Mississippi media production.
Runners, are you ready? The 15th annual Viking Half Marathon, 10K and 5K will take to the streets on March 28th in Greenwood. Registered now at VikingHalfMarathon.com. Paid for by the Greenwood Convention and Visitors Bureau and the Greenwood Chamber of Commerce.
MidDays with Gerard Gibert is on the air. MidDays with Gerard Gibert is powered by C-Spire. Power your home or business with C-Spire Fiber. To learn more, visit supertalk.fm/C-Spire. C-Spire Fiber powers SuperTalk Mississippi. Get ready to go beyond the headlines and join a meaningful conversation with people from around the state. Hello. You're listening to MidDays with Gerard Gibert here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to MidDays, SuperTalk Mississippi. I'm your host, Gerard Gibert, along with Rhino in the Element Wealth Studio, guiding you through the middle of your day with facts, fodder, and fine music on this
Friday Eve.
Heck dang, yeah, we're moving right along through the week here. So is that legislature. What are they doing down there? Where's the old crickets? We need to crank that up again. Man, oh, man. I'm going to start out. There you go. We are going to have Senator Daniel Sparks in the Element Wealth studio later today at 12:05 and get his take on a number of the measures that are being considered, and looks like a lot of those are heading to conference. And I'm not sure that bodes well for the ultimate passage of some of the legislation. But I got to share this rather interesting story that crossed my feed, and it's about monarch butterflies. Looks like they're making a bit of a comeback, the monarch butterflies. The future for the past 20, 30 years of these beautiful creatures has been a bit dire, actually flirting with extinction. However, there's a little bit of hope. New data from the World Wildlife Federation, is a big conservation group, says that the decline of eastern monarchs, the world's largest population, has stopped, even as these insects face threats across their range. And I found it interesting, Rhino. They literally, you can't count butterflies. I mean, you can't physically count them, but they look at the density of them. I know there's statistical methodologies and so forth that.
But I mean, in some places they do count them.
Like each individual one?
Yeah.
Okay, well, so in this particular case, they're looking at the density of the insects in the trees and how many acres that they are occupying when they're up in the trees for whatever that time of year is part of their seasonal process there. So what they're saying is that just looking at these areas like in Mexico, they aggregated in the trees a couple of years ago, taking about 2.2 acres, and then last year 4.4, and this year 7.2. So that's how they're gauging this somewhat improvement in the population. So the population up slightly below historic numbers. If you go back to the 90s and you look at the area occupied by the monarchs, and they go to Mexico, by the way, for the winter. And so it's the Mexican branch of the World Wildlife Federation that is tracking this information. I just found that kind of interesting. So 40 acres back in 1995 and now just under 8. So still a decline over that period of time, but an improvement over the recent couple of years. So that's good news. Meanwhile, the price of oil is shooting up today. That's because there were attacks on some oil infrastructure overnight, and that's rattling markets. There were attacks. I want to make sure I get this right. Israel attacked some of the oil infrastructure in Iran, and Iran attacked and blew up some of similar oil infrastructure in Qatar. So overall, that causes problems. It's certainly viewed as causing problems for the future of oil supply on the globe, and that's driving prices up. That's spooking investors again with the markets in negative territory, though they have trimmed losses from earlier in the session, and oil has actually come down, up over yesterday, but down from its futures. At one point, we had Brent C crude up around $118 a barrel. There are concerns with these latest attacks that oil could shoot up to $150 a barrel. That would be a 50% increase to its present price. And so you could translate that into what the price at the pump would be. Imagine a 50% increase. You're talking $7 diesel.
But I don't think that's even really a reality at this point. Like, that would be something to be worried about if Saudi Arabia didn't have the east-west pipeline that can pump something like 6-7 million barrels from one side of Saudi Arabia to the other. Although there is a bit of a bottleneck when it gets to the other side because their storage is not quite ready for that volume. And you've got China still negotiating with Iran to get shipments through the strait. So it would take the strait being completely closed, the east-west pipeline being completely done, and about 40 other things before it would get that high.
I can just tell you that the investment markets are concerned about this, and these people know what they're doing. Is all I'm going to say. I'm not being argumentative about it. I'm saying that it's crossing their minds. They're concerned because nobody knows where this thing's going. I think there is concern when the president says we've obliterated their military capability, and then the next day missiles fire. Now, I think what we have to recognize is that this is what they're down to. They're down to
single-digit launches a day.
Correct. But now what they're doing is they're going after oil infrastructure. They know they can't do any damage or harm to military targets. And they know that they have the ability to disrupt the global oil markets. So now they're shooting rockets at nearby Qatar and going after their oil infrastructure. So I hear you. There are lots of responses underway, and I caught a lengthy interview this morning with the Secretary of Treasury, Scott Bessent, and he laid out the administration's strategy to deal with this. And he acknowledged this is a huge problem, and he's concerned about getting back to he basically said the late February pricing just before the war started. That was $67 a barrel, by the way. He says that's what's on the other side of this conflict and even better. But he did lay it out, just as you were talking about with Saudi Arabia stepping up production. He talked about releases from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, not only in this country but other countries that are feeling the pinch. He noted that. He noted the Trump's recent waiver of the Jones Act for transportation of tankers between American ports. But the other thing he said that's on the table is lifting the sanctions on Iranian oil. Now, that's complicated. And what it really means is there's some countries that are buying Iranian oil, which is passing through the strait, but there's some sanctions on that, and that slows it down and costs money. And he's talking about a temporary lifting of those sanctions. Basically, it's on the countries that are buying oil from Iran because we view them as our enemy. So, and now the president has threatened to blow up Iran's gas field. That's something else that occurred overnight after these attacks on Qatar and then Israel attacking Iran. So the point I'm making is that we got the two sides now going after oil and gas targets as opposed to military targets, and that does cause problems. But the secretary said, in essence, by the time we unsanction the floating Iranian oil, and just to make it clear, these are on ships, on tankers that are currently in the strait, on the water, that he would lift the sanctions on. He said we would have intervened and we would have created about 260 million excess barrels of energy, calling that a physical intervention. He stopped short just to let folks know. He made it very clear that the United States government will not intervene in the financial markets, essentially imposing price controls. Won't do that, and I applaud him for that. I respect him for that. He said, we're going to focus more on what we can do from a physical perspective rather than a financial perspective. Financial as in intervening in the free exchange of this commodity. He also said, and I like the term he used here, he said once this thing is over, security will be real, not illusory. I thought that was a good choice of words on the Secretary's part. Coming right back in the Element Well studio.
When it comes to tree removal,
this segment of Middays with Gerard Gibert is brought to you by Covington County Hospital in Collins, where your health matters.
Middays with Gerard.
Good for America. Good for fans of justice and truth. Good for us.
SuperTalk, Mississippi.
This is what we stand for.
Get your motor running. Head out on the highway. Looking for adventure. And whatever comes our way. Yeah, darling, go make it happen. Take the world in a loving embrace. Fire all of the guns and explode into space. I like smoking light.
Welcome back, everyone. It is Middays. We are live in the Element Well studio. We thank you so much for joining us today. So my hope is that we get this thing resolved and behind us. I do absolutely believe that what the President and the Secretary, and by the way, the Secretary of of Interior, Doug Burgum, he followed up on that interview with the Secretary of Treasury. So you kind of had the financial aspect of it, and then you had the physical aspect of it. And I believe what they're saying is right, that if we can get this behind us, no doubt the world will be a safer place, and we can hopefully not be so concerned 24 hours a day, every second of the year, about what are these nutcases are going to do next. That is a problem the globe has grappled with for way too long. So I applaud the President for taking action in that regard and addressing that. But we have to be honest about the political realities of this as well. There's not like a hard date that says, boom, this is when we're done and we're out. So he's made it clear when we're finished, we're done. And he's kind of defined that as when we are confident that they have no ability to create nuclear weapons. And that's what we've now learned instigated these attacks that occurred 3 weeks ago. Was our intelligence suggested, I don't think I'm reporting this incorrectly here, our intelligence suggested, yeah, they're pretty dang close to having 11 is what I recall the number that they cited being, 11 nuclear bombs. That's unacceptable for nutcases. And they are. So
yeah, it was the overlap of three pieces of data, 3 data points that are supposedly the impetus for Trump pulling the trigger on it. The intelligence coming in that they had enough fissionable material for 11 nuclear weapons.
Right.
The intelligence from Israel that the Ayatollah and his top leaders would be meeting that Saturday for brunch.
Okay.
And the final negotiation meeting with Iran coming to the table and them openly admitting, we want to build 10 nukes. They said they wanted to build 10. The intelligence said they had enough material for 11. So you have all three of those things where they're coming to the negotiating table going, no, this negotiation has just been a waste of time. We're building 10. We know where they're all meeting. They say they're building 10. Independent intelligence says they have enough for 11. He pulled the trigger.
Exactly. Great explanation. Great rundown of the sequence of events. Absolutely true. So that's where we are. And I think a lot of people look at it and say, look, when the Strait of Hormuz returns to normal operations, we've achieved our goals. But I don't think that's going to happen until we're confident that they have no ability to create nuclear weapons and that the strait is totally secure. And today the president is meeting with the Prime Minister of Japan. I believe at the White House she has traveled to our country. They have an interest in resolving this as well. They have like no oil, as you know, the country of Japan. So they rely totally on imports. This is causing problems for them. But you know something else they have, as I'm sure you're aware, Rhino, a very good Navy. They've always been a nation that puts together a fantastic naval force. And you know what they have? Minesweepers. Started checking into that, which are pretty critical assets, military assets, to be used in the strait. So
I can't remember if they can actually call it a Navy, though.
Oh, really?
I think it's still a defense force.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that. Interesting.
Because after World War II, they were forced to have it in their constitution that they would not have a standing army.
Okay. Wow. Interesting. Well, so, and remember, this is a prime minister that our president endorsed. That they think alike. This is a conservative-oriented thinking prime minister.
And there's been a big upswell of nationalism in Japan with a desire for the ability to protect themselves to the point where I think it's even coming up in political conversations as to amending their constitution to allow them to have a military.
Interesting. Well, that's good stuff.
In response to obvious Chinese aggression in the area.
Well, let's hope that maybe they can work out something beneficial to not only both nations but the world today. That's really the big news coming out of Washington is this meeting scheduled with the Prime Minister of Japan who has traveled into our country for that purpose. But in the meantime, there's some pain at the pump. There's no doubt about it. That's wreaking havoc on household budgets, and it's certainly causing problems for the markets and your retirement accounts and so forth. But I believe it's temporary. I'm still optimistic that we're going to get through this. And it's one of those things where when you do get through it, there's such pent-up demand. I mean, as the markets continue to sell off on all the bad news, right? So when Iran attacks Qatar and Israel attacks Iran, specifically oil infrastructure, of course that rattles markets. That's just news being fed into the algorithms that say, sell, sell. But once we get through that, it'll be buy, because you know what? This is the time to buy if you've got the stomach for it, because everything is being beat down. We're at, 47,000 and change on the Dow? Wasn't too long ago, we were reporting the record of 50,000. So it's not like we hadn't been there. We're not looking like for a new high is the point. Just getting back to where we were, I think, is quite possible. So, and something to think about here at home that won't come up a lot, but this isn't good for PERS, because PERS has got a bunch of money invested in various investment instruments, and when markets are in retreat, that's not good for their return, placing even more pressure on the program, which has a giant unfunded liability. So, but you look at oil futures out in the December time frame, October through December quarter, they look more in line with what we saw in February. So the markets are optimistic we're going to get through it, and I'm with them. It's just painful in the meantime. Gas prices, however, have risen every day since March the 1st. Every day since March 1st. Some states are seeing a significantly higher surge than others, but they exceed $3 in every state. There are 3 where the price of the low grade of regular exceeds $5. And you could probably guess that those are, generally speaking, Democrat-run states: California, Washington, Oregon, with all kinds of, Alaska as well, with all kinds of crazy rules and regulations that, and taxes, of course, that make the price of gas even more expensive because of all the layered add-ons. So we'll see what happens with respect to the price of oil, markets, and so forth. Meanwhile, speaking of Oregon, oh my gosh, there's always crazy people out there. So turns out a school principal, one of those that was quite vocal in celebration of the assassination of Charlie Kirk, a principal at an Oregon high school, I believe. Oh boy, he's been arrested for child pornography. Are we surprised? Why are so many of these wackos running schools in our school environment? Why is that? Why do they seem to be just like a higher percentage than throughout the rest of society? You got any thoughts?
I mean, why do flies like dumpsters?
I don't know, man. So this Oregon
These
principal
sickos want to do things with and to kids, so of course they're going to gravitate to the congregation of kids.
And you know what? I really do try not to judge people on the basis of their physical appearance. This guy just looks like a wacko.
You can always tell.
It's just...
You can look at him and go, yep, you are off.
High school principal, Columbia County, was just sentenced to just over 5 years in prison for sharing images and possessing images of child sex abuse. The principal who lashed out and was celebrating at the Charlie Kirk assassination. Coming right back.
From the Seabrook, Gerard Gibert. He keeps his classified documents right where they belong. Inside a Journey record jacket from the 1980s. Gerard Gibert, SuperTalk, Mississippi.
The lads from Wales, Badfinger, an exceedingly underrated group from the early 70s, 60s, late 60s, early 70s. And we've talked about it before, but numerous tragic stories behind the members of that band. A couple of them committed suicide. One committed suicide, the first one, because he found out that their manager had absconded with their compensation, their wealth that he was managing on their behalf while they were just playing music, getting paid for it. And then another band member committed suicide over the other band member who committed suicide. Really sad deal. Man, oh man. So, the TSA shut down to a great extent, causing headache across the country. Passengers fed up, lengthy lines, checkpoints at airports, if you've seen, Rhino, any of the photos or videos, it's astounding to see how long the lines are to get through the compressed TSA checkpoints relative to the number of travelers. And it's spring break, so nobody's out there traveling right now. I'm worried about my son. My son's up in Las Vegas on a business meeting and scheduled to return today. And I don't know what the lines are like in Vegas and what sort of congestion and delays there are, but concerned about that. There are now risk of airport closures. No end in sight, because the Democrats, you see, they're more concerned about the well-being of illegals than they are American travelers. That's disgusting. And one of the things they object to, by the way, with respect to ICE and its operations, you know by now, that's why we can't get this DHS bill out of the U.S. Congress to the president's desk for signature. It would fund the DHS, which includes TSA, also includes ICE, is because they want to reform ICE. They want to get rid of ICE is what they want to do. They don't believe that we should have borders, nor do they believe we should take into custody anyone who is here illegal and deport them. And so they're standing in the gap of the path to the president's desk to fund the Department of Homeland Security, which would return TSA to its normal operations. Problem is, you already got some 300 TSA agents who've quit. I'm not sure they're coming back. So this is a huge problem. Remind me not to be flying anytime soon through the airports. What a nightmare, what a pain they are causing, all because they prioritize illegals over law-abiding American citizens who just want to get on a dang airplane. Simple as that. And one of the things they want to do, you should know, is prohibit ICE from being near polling places, precincts. Wait, I thought the illegals aren't voting. Why are they worried about ICE being there? And I'm not convinced ICE would be hanging around polling places. I don't think that's what they're after. I mean, the number is teeny tiny. And how do you know? That's not. These people are so delusional. That is not a problem. It's similar to some of the objections they raised. It's crazy about election day activities around precincts, like you can't give water to somebody in line. Remember that? Oh, my gosh. They were saying that. No, nobody's saying you can't give water to somebody in the line. They try to paint this picture that because...
It's because they know their voters are stupid.
That's terrible, man. Just terrible. And you're right, they lap it up. They just lap it up. Yeah, that's right. It's incredible. And I don't understand these myriad objections they have to just aspiring to, desiring to have orderly voting in elections. It's almost as if, as you like to say, they rely on illicit activity around elections to gain power.
Do we need to remind the listeners that the only states Kamala won were states without voter ID?
That's true. That's 100% true. And I've said it before, I'll say it again, this practice in some states of mass mail-out of ballots has got nothing but trouble waiting, man. And that's not an illegal issue there. That's just people understand that that's...
not an illegal alien issue.
Right, exactly. My bad. Yeah. Oh,
still likely illegal ballots.
100%. Those are states that are ripe with opportunity for pitching elections, no doubt, tanking them. So, Yeah, it's kind of sad. We got a couple of minutes here. We got some sound for you. This is the governor of the great state of New York, Kathy Hochul.
What I want to make sure we are smart about is having a system in place where it's not just taxing for the sake of taxing, and being conscious of the fact that I need people who are high net worth to support the generous social programs that we want to have in our state. Right? Now, there are some patriotic millionaires who stepped up. Okay, cut me the checks. I mean, just if you want to be supportive, but maybe the first step should be go down to Palm Beach and see who you can bring back home, because our tax base has been eroded. So I philosophically don't have a problem. It is like I have to look at the fact that we are in competition with other states who have less of a tax burden on their corporations and their individuals. And I would say remote work changed everything. There were people who could only work in an office in Manhattan and work in New York State, and they were captives to our state. They were going to stay. We've saw that that's not the case. I mean, Wall Street businesses looking at Texas, they're not going there because they have a nicer governor. I know that for sure. But they're going there because of the tax rate. We have to be smart about this. But we can fund what we want to fund with what we already are taking in.
Please, millionaires, don't go where you pay less taxes. That's the message there. Cut me the checks. Hey, look, Toots, fine. If these patriotic millionaires want to throw their money at your stupid programs, let them do it. You don't need taxes, right? They're patriotic millionaires.
Well, they also said the quiet part out loud. They only consider you patriotic if you give them money.
Oh, that's exactly right. That is so right. So she's
zero love for the actual country.
That's
zero
incredible.
Pride in the nation. Just you're a patriot because you gave me money.
For their stupid, generous program. Here's their generous social program.
AKA vote buying.
Exactly.
Why do you think I use the word worthless so often when describing liberals, leftists, and Democrats?
Incredible. Meanwhile,
because a true bleeding heart is truly worthless.
It's true. They do more harm than good. They really do. Washington State, we've been talking about this. They gave final approval to the Senate bill, concurred with the House's amendments there. That's more than we can do here, except this is super bad policy. The governor's got the bill in his hands right now. This would enact, this measure, a 9.9% rate on household income above $1 million starting in January 2028. And this, of course, is to fund more programs. I know I laugh at that. It's really not funny, but that is the word they use, the all-encompassing word. We need more government programs. Oh, because they work so damn well. Unbelievable that they're doing this. So you're seeing day in and day out reports of the wealthy people and the good businesses, the successful large businesses that Washington is blessed to have. You're running them out, you idiots. You're stupid, but they don't know because they need programs. Unbelievable that this is going on. And so and you look at the programs, it's a series of just send checks to all these various people. That's what it really is at the end of the day. So now you're seeing, though, this divide in this country between states such as Mississippi and others who continue to push down income taxes. Ours, of course, being phased out over a period of time, went down this year relative to next year, already scheduled to go down by a quarter point of the current 4% flat rate in each of the succeeding 4 years here in the state of Mississippi. Then it incrementally decreases based on achievement of certain triggers. You know the whole deal there. That was the legislation that passed last year. But you got the blue states that are out there raising taxes. Also, where the gas is most expensive on top of that. Coming right back in the Element Wealth studio.
Hey, this is Bob.
We interrupt this program.
Gerard Gibert.
Here we go.
This is huge. Huge news. Huge news. Huge.
You need to listen to this.
Middays with Gerard. SuperTalk, Mississippi.
young teacher, the subject of schoolgirl fantasy. She wants him so badly, knows what she wants to be. Inside her, there's longing. This girl's an open page, bookmarking. She's so close now. This girl is half his age.
Welcome back, everyone. The Police. Boy, I remember that so vividly. They were a pretty popular group.
I should have played that for the principal story.
Exactly. We are in the Element Wealth studio. Are you thinking about or planning for retirement? Do you have a plan? Go to myelementwealth.com or call 601-957-6006 to let Element Wealth help you find your balance between income growth and guarantees. And on today's episode of In a Mississippi Minute with Steve Azar, you'll hear from musician Dan Wheatman, who played for many years with John Denver. You can listen to In a Mississippi Minute with Steve Azar today at 1 p.m. here on SuperTalk Mississippi 601-879-4395. That would be the C Spire text line. A lot of controversy in the state about the pharmacy benefit manager industry and reforms that are being proposed down there in the legislature. You know, we had a House bill, went down to the Senate, it got amended. It did pass the Senate. Looks like it's headed to conference. And it's a very confusing subject, is just all I'll say. So you got Senator Bryce Wiggins, who joined the program earlier this week. He voted against a measure. He indicates, as did 6 other senators who voted against it, that this would actually increase costs. The amendments the Senate passed would increase costs to patients and to the state through both the Medicaid program and the state's self-funded insurance for state and public sector employees. Super complicated, in my view, because I'm seeing commentary and analysis from people who are in the industry, and they seem to conflict a little bit. So we had an independent pharmacist on with us last week. Really appreciate that. We're going to try to get another on to unravel all this for us. And then today we got Senator Daniel Sparks at 12:05. This isn't something he's been deeply engaged with, other than everybody, honestly, in the legislature is to some extent. We're going to see if we can maybe get a little more information out of him regarding this issue as well. And like I said, it's a bit complicated. And one of the things that complicates it is, of course, the various, you know about this, Rhino, the various input costs or the pricing methodologies used in that industry. And that's nothing new. As you know, those standards have been around a long time. But essentially, there are 4 cost models, and they can have totally different and very wide deltas in prices of medication, just depending on the model they use. And then that all gets factored into ultimately what insurance pays, how the PBMs and what they pay, how much goes to the pharmacist for dispensing the drug, filling the prescription, and then what it means to the patients. So I think it'd be really good for somebody to explain, rather than go through all these examples of, okay, here's what that drug would cost using this price methodology, that price methodology. Rather than doing that, what I'd like to hear that I think would help everybody is, okay, here's what you're paying today without these reforms. Here's what you'd pay tomorrow with these reforms. Do you agree? And that's what people want to know. What does this mean to me? Rather than all of these relatively convoluted calculations. I get that. That's how the industry works, and I appreciate that. But I think all consumers and patients want to know is, help me understand how this will drive my cost of prescription drugs down. If you say, no, we're going to make more money by driving the price up, I don't think you're going to get a lot of takers to support it. And I'm not saying that's the case. I'm saying I don't know. I'd like to see somebody explain, here's what it'd be, not based on the different calculations of the different standards used to calculate the price, but rather, here's what would happen tomorrow if this bill goes through. That's what it means to you. I think that's what people want to know. And I say also, equally important, what does it mean to you if it doesn't pass? Does that mean prices are going up? Will this to some extent moderate the future price increases? All that is what people want to know, especially given the cost of health care through the roof. Time for a break right now. We're coming right back in the Element Wealth studio. We've got Darnell Moffett, Director of Community Development. Darnell, Southern Pine Electric Cooperative.
Of Middays with Gerard Gibert is brought to you by the Mississippi Business Journal. Visit msbusinessjournal.com. Scott Coopwood, publisher and president.
Welcome to the show that challenges you to think deeply and look beyond political posturing. You're listening to Middays with Gerard Gibert here on SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It is Middays from the Element Wealth studio on this
Friday Eve.
It's our great pleasure to welcome now Darnell Moffett, Director of Community Development with Southern Pine Electric Cooperative. Darnell, thanks for coming on today.
Thank you for having me on. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. We got you loud and clear. Appreciate it. So we wanted to have you on to talk about your program that is known as Members Helping Members. Talk about that.
Well, thank you again for having me on, and thank you for issuing your clarification a few weeks ago. In 2024, Southern Pine launched a Roundup program. We call it Members Helping Members, and only members of Southern Pine can participate in the program. Those who participate have their bill rounded up each month to the nearest dollar. So be rounded up from anywhere from 1 cent to 99 cents each month. Those funds are collected, and we then transfer them to our partner, the Pine Belt Foundation, which will administer a program for us whereby companies, organizations and individuals in our service area that are providing meaningful services can apply for grants. And so twice a year we have a open grant application process. We receive those applications. The Pine Belt Foundation vets those applications and then brings a recommendation to an advisory committee that's set up by Southern Pine. That committee is comprised of members themselves, one from each of our 11 counties. That advisory committee looks at the recommendation and approves it, and then the grants are awarded. And so we know the story of how electricity got to rural communities is fairly widely known, but we believe power is about more than electricity. We believe it's about people. And so this program is set up to help organizations and individuals that are doing meaningful work in the communities. So at this point, we've awarded, in 2025, we've awarded almost $300,000 to about 37 different organizations that include youth leadership programs, education programs, schools. We have a number of first responders that have applied and received grants, fire departments specifically. Organizations that are providing help to families that have fallen on hard times, have one organization that received funds that providing services to pregnant women. And so that's kind of in general what the program's about. Now, there are a lot of Roundup programs out there, but this program, Southern Pine, receives no benefit itself from this. This is strictly members funding it, and then organizations that provide services in our 11 counties are the ones that are eligible to apply.
And so those members who apply, receive these grants, provide services, as you say, in the 11 counties, they're also your customers, right? Your members.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So it's literally members helping members. Now, the organization doesn't have to reside in the actual county, but they have to be providing services in the 11 counties.
I see. Makes total sense.
Yes, and so we're excited about it. We believe it's making a difference in areas and rural areas where, resources are limited. And so this is another avenue to help those who just need a little push to get over the hump, so to speak.
So, Darnell, when did this program begin? When was it launched?
Well, if I take you all the way back, it was envisioned and ready to be put in place before the pandemic. So we put it on hold, and then in 2024, August, we announced it again, and October of 2024, we launched it. And so we began collecting the funds in October, November, and then had the first application period of February 2025. Then the first awards from that application were made in May of 2025.
Okay.
Second application period was in August, awards in November. So we have 2 applications, 2 awards each year. And so at this point, we have about 92% participation from our members in the program.
Wow. That's awesome. It's a great idea. Can you share with us whose idea this was? Was this an idea of several people, or one person just showed up one day and say, I think we ought to do this? How'd that come about?
Well, it came about before my time here at Southern Pine, but I can give you a little bit of the history. Back in the 80s, a co-op, an electric co-op in rural South Carolina, the CEO had the idea, and not sure where he got the idea from, but he introduced the program, and it was so successful that co-op still today helps other co-ops start programs. About 5 or 6 years ago, I read that there were about 250 other electric co-ops who had initiated a program like this one, and somewhere between $50 and $100 million had been given back into the local communities. So I'm not really sure who brought it to the table here at Southern Pine, but it's here, and we're glad it's here.
That's awesome. Can you tell us about any of the specific organizations, or are you free to discuss that are benefiting, receiving these grants and benefiting?
Sure. Let me just start with first responders. Local small town fire departments have probably received about 30% of the 37 recipients.
Yep.
So about 30% of those are fire departments. Of course, they're purchasing equipment, and we hope never to have that, but if we need it, it'll be there, hopefully. In addition to that, we've had several schools to apply. Here's a little interesting story. In one of our school districts, a storm came through and blew down the shade tree on the playground. And so the school was able to apply for a grant to build a canopy for the children when they go out for recess. Another program provides ACT prep for students. They applied for funds to get calculators. To use in the program. I mentioned earlier, well, I didn't specifically, but there's a program, an organization that provides services to expecting mothers. They receive funds, and another organization, I believe it's the Family Restoration Center. They provide shelter for families that have fallen on hard times. So that's kind of a broad spectrum of the organization that have received funds.
Gotcha. That's really cool. It's a great idea, and of course it's a concept that a lot of people are aware of in the retail industry. It's very common to have this sort of roundup question. A lot of retailers provide that and offer that where the rounding up to the nearest dollar would be donated to a specific charitable organizations. And you're sort of catching people, when they're buying something, and it's a small amount of money, but it all adds up into these very useful grants.
Yeah. We like it because it's an opportunity to bring all of our members together. And we have roughly 70,000 meters in our service territory. That's about 60,000 members. And so it's just an opportunity to bring people together to help the communities that we serve. And it's all local. And so that helps the concept.
And it seems like it's been very well embraced by your members. You mentioned earlier in our talk about how many are participating.
Yes, very much so. A lot of research went into how to present the program, and after we did the research, we rolled it out, and after we're going into our second year, and that's where we are, still at a very high participation rate, and we're excited about that. And we believe it's going to continue because those who are receiving grants are now becoming our advertisement for the program.
Yeah.
Communities are seeing the good that they're doing, and the word is spreading.
Well, it's awesome, and we're so grateful that you came on with us today. Darnell Moffett, Director of Community Development, Southern Pine Electric Cooperative, to discuss this Helping Members program. Just a super deal. Appreciate you coming on, Darnell. Thanks a lot, man.
All right. Thank you for having me. Can I tell people where to go to get more information?
Please.
You can go to our website, southernpine.coop/MHM.
Got it.
Southern.
Hey, is everybody ready?
I'm ready. Ready here.
Middays with Gerard Gibert on SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It is Middays. We're live again in the Element Well studio, so really appreciate Darnell for coming on and talking about that fantastic program that Southern Pine Electric Cooperative operates, members helping members. Give the folks the website address again. I know, unfortunately, we ran out of time. We may have cut off Darnell before we went to break there.
Yeah, if you go to southernpine.coop, that's southernpine.coop/MHM. It'll take you right to the Members Helping Members page.
I'm looking at it right now. Well done. Appreciate that. And in fact, there is a testimony on the splash page of the website from John Shoemaker, Taylorsville Fire Chief. Quote, "This program could help our first responders purchase the vital equipment they sorely need, equipment that can make a real difference when it counts." Appreciate that. Good testimony there. It's a smart program. That's convenient, easy. Most people feel generous and charitable in that respect. It's not a lot of money, but when you're dealing with a lot of people, that adds up. And that's exactly what's happening here. So I was talking to you on the break. We were talking about this pharmacy benefit manager legislation, reform legislation, traversing down there at the Capitol. A House bill we mentioned earlier that passed, HB 1665, was transmitted. Did you describe that one for us the other day, what that procession looked like?
Yeah, because it was pharmacy related. They were taking steps 5 at a time and counting them out.
Right. It went down to the Senate, and the Senate saw fit to add a couple of amendments, and in doing so, that has honestly made it even more controversial, especially since there are 7 senators, among them Senator Bryce Wiggins, who was on the program earlier in the week. He voted against the legislation and explained his vote. So I just asked you, why can't we just get somebody to tell us, look, this is what your drug costs today, this is what it would cost after this bill should become law, or this is what would happen to your drug if it doesn't become law. And you were explaining, and I'm aware of this, that pricing of pharmaceuticals is extremely dynamic, like changes daily, if not more often, right?
Yeah, I mean, at the pharmacy, they're not going to know how much it's going to cost until they run it on your insurance.
Yeah.
The only time they can give you a base price is if you're just paying cash for it.
Okay. And what's complicated, as you know, is that there are multiple, at least 4 pricing methodologies used, standards, in pharmaceutical costing. And that further complicates the matter. What I'm generally seeing are employers that have group coverage, right? They're the ones that offer group health insurance to their employees. Typically, that cost is shared among the employer and employee. And different companies have different standards and approaches to that, models on that. Some employers pay more than others, and then you can even get even further detailed. It depends on the nature of coverage of the employee, if it's the employee only, the employee and a spouse, the employee and a dependent, the employee, spouse, and dependents. Usually those are the 4 categories, and of course those premiums are all priced differently. And then employers may choose to reimburse their employee differently based on the coverage that they select. So where the PBMs come in is on behalf of the top-line insurer that provides the coverage through the employer to the employee, who presents that to the physician, or in this case at the pharmacy, to purchase their medications. They, of course, bear the expense based on the cost of coverage as quoted to them, sold to them by the top-line insurer. The PBMs are often hired by the top-line insurer to manage just the pharmacy aspect of healthcare coverage, because it's just so brutally complicated. And so they work directly with the top-line insurer. That's why they're called. I mean, if there truly is an example, a very pointed example of a middleman in a supply chain, it would be pharmacy benefit managers. Like them or not, they act between a number of parties, including the manufacturer of the drug, the top-line insurer, the retail pharmacist, and the patient. Sometimes maybe even the physician has got some involvement in that, the provider of the medical services. So that's what makes it super complicated. And so what I'm generally seeing, though, are employers are concerned that this legislation may raise their costs. And then you've got the independent pharmacists, I hope I'm representing this accurately, who feel like they're at a decided disadvantage to the big chain pharmacies, because many of them are also owned by the same company who provides the top-line insurance and owns the pharmacy benefit manager. It's what's known as vertical integration. And so those people contend, hey, look, our vertical integration is actually keeping costs lower for consumers. And the independent pharmacists say, well, we're having a hard time competing with your big chain directly owned retail pharmacies, they're part of you. We're getting our insurance. Our patients get their insurance from you. Then you got the pharmacy benefit managers. Then you got your own pharmacies. Sometimes they have the clinics, as you know. And so there's something known as steering, where the PBMs will steer the patient to the pharmacy that's also owned by the same company that owns the PBM. And that can be problematic. And then there's what's called spread pricing. You know about that, and that's where, well, they pay a particular price for it and charge they charge the top line insurer a price for the drug. They reimburse the pharmacist at a much lower rate, and they keep the delta, the difference in there. That's what's called the spread pricing. And they work contracts out. They basically say, take it or leave it, right? This is what we're going to pay you for these formulary, these schedule of drugs. Like it or not, take it or leave it. And the problem is if they say, okay, I don't take it, well, then you lose the patients whose insurance is with the top-line provider, carrier, that contracts with that PBM, often is owned by the same company, a subsidiary, wholly owned subsidiary of the parent company. And so it puts the independent pharmacist in a pickle. Well, we got to have the customers, but you're creating an environment such that we're at a disadvantage. This is what they contend in competing with the pharmacies that you guys own. You're part of the same company. And that's what I would say is fair to say, that the independent pharmacies say, yeah, if something doesn't break, we're not going to be able to survive, in which case we could end up with lots of areas, particularly in rural Mississippi, where you don't have the big chain pharmacies that are all part of the same conglomerate that is the insurer and the PBM itself, part of the same parent company, thus leaving medical pharmacy deserts, if you will, where local people wouldn't have close access to a pharmacy. That's a problem, no doubt. So that's what's going on. Employers, on the other hand, are saying, man, if you guys pass this legislation, our costs are going up. Insurance is going to go up. We're going to have to cover some of that ourselves, pass the higher cost on to our employees who use our insurance to buy drugs. You're shaking your head. I just want to make sure. If I explain this, I just want the people to kind of understand what frames this debate. Am I good there?
Yeah.
Okay. So something that just crossed over here is that a couple of days ago, a letter was sent to the Speaker. This is public. It's sent to the Speaker, Michael Callahan, Secretary-Treasurer for the electric co-op. Very timely. We were just talking to one of the electric co-ops, Darnell Moffett. Enjoyed that conversation, and that goes back to a mistake I made on the air about their organization and the good work they do with the Members for Members program. But this individual administers the group health that covers all the electric co-ops and writes a letter to the Speaker that says if this thing goes through, our costs are going to go up substantially, with examples, financial examples. You see how dang complicated this is? And it's not. I want to believe everybody, but there's conflicting information. It's almost like we need to get them in here and have a debate, maybe. Coming right back.
From the Get It Now.
Properly set all controls before recording.
All systems go. The talk that keeps Mississippi talking. Middays with Gerard Gibert on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Mr. Alan Parsons, the Alan Parsons Project. Quite the talent he is. Some great YouTube videos of him performing live. That tune in particular, by the way. He's not with his old regular band that recorded it, but still pretty good, man. Pretty talented individual. Unique individual with unique sound, for sure. We're back with you. We're just talking about this pharmacy benefit manager controversy, I'm going to call it that, down there in the Capitol. It just seems like that I find myself wanting more information. And there's so much conflicting information, I think would be the point. But here you got someone representing a group of organizations that band together for a self-funded insurance plan. And folks, if you're not familiar with that concept, it simply means that rather than actually insuring, the underwriting aspect of insurance through a third party such as Blue Cross or United Healthcare, you pay them premiums and they have the risk, they bear the risk and cover the cost of all that is covered by the policies that you have acquired. In a self-funded plan, they take money in. Usually you got to be a pretty big organization. They take money in and they store it, if you will, in their reserves and pay claims out of that because they're big enough to spread that risk. They find it to be less expensive to manage the plan, actually fund the plan, not manage. Most of the time, as you know, Rhino, they'll pay a third-party administrator, they call TPAs, to administer it, but the financial responsibility of both the premiums that they collect from their employees and then the claims they pay come from that same fund, that same pot of money. A third-party administrator oversees it and manages claims and payments to providers and so forth, as opposed to transferring 100% of the risk to a third-party insurer. That's the difference between a self-funded plan and a third party, which is a more traditional model. But when you get to large organizations, the state of Mississippi is an example. They have a third-party administrator, I believe it's Blue Cross Blue Shield in Mississippi, that administers the plan. But the money that goes into it and goes out of it comes from the people who are members and participate in that coverage. That's different than, again, just shifting all the risk over to the third-party insurance carrier. But here's the ECM spokesperson for their program who says, yeah, this would actually increase costs to, what did he say, $40 to $60 per month average employee increase if this bill passes. The bottom line is he encourages the Speaker of the House to send 1665 to conference. It's coming back over from the Senate having been amended. I thought it was already invited to conference, Rhino. We need to probably check that, HB 1665. And encourages at that point in Congress to restore to the version passed by the House. But I'm hearing independent pharmacists say, yeah, the House version wasn't good. We want the Senate version. So I'm confused. But I've had members of the House say, well, geez, the independent pharmacists said they liked the House bill before it went down to the Senate and got amended. So I'm just going to say again, I'm confused at a minimum, I think, and it's one way to put it. And I've spent a little time studying this. You can imagine how confused it is for people that are just getting bombarded with this with a first glance here. So that's kind of where we are. Maybe Daniel Sparks, when he comes in, the senator from Tishomingo County, can help us understand a little better. I'm not sure, again, how familiar he is with this subject. He works on so many other things, and I will give him credit. When he works on them, he digs into them, man, and he knows his stuff. Yes, so at this point, it's been returned for concurrence, by the Senate.
Yeah, I don't see any action
to
in the House
but
yet.
The House hadn't taken action on it yet. So this letter from the ECM spokesperson to the Speaker is, hey, send this thing to conference and restore it to its state before it got amended in the Senate. That's the request. So I don't know. That's where we are, and we'll keep an eye on it. Speaking of health care, no doubt that because the government at all level is heavily involved in the health insurance industry, you can't deny it when you look at the combination of Medicaid, Medicare, TRICARE, ACA subsidies. You add all that up, that's a bunch of dang money. I've said many times, in effect, we're in the health insurance industry in government. That's what we do. You think about here in the state of Mississippi, we have more people covered by Medicare, Medicaid, and ACA subsidized coverage, which is actually commercial coverage, so take that out. But Medicare and Medicaid, that's more than the commercial coverage in the state. And nationally, it's about 130 million people between the two programs. And then you got TRICARE for our veterans. We're big time in the health insurance industry. And we've seen a bunch of fraud that's been exposed, especially in Minnesota. That was just incredible watching all that. I got to point this out, and I know I'm beating the horse to death. Why in the heck there's a child care part of Medicaid makes no sense to me whatsoever. It just doesn't belong. But we saw the money laundering to Somalia ostensibly through these child care Medicaid programs. Now, Mehmet Oz, you know who he is. He's the administrator for the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, Dr. Mehmet Oz, a famous writer, TV personality, ran for U.S. Senate in Pennsylvania, did not prevail, got appointed by the president and approved to serve as the administrator for CMS. He's now saying Florida is now the epicenter of a crackdown from the federal government on Medicare and Medicaid fraud. Florida, run by Governor Ron DeSantis, a good Republican, a popular governor. It just shows you, again, A, how complicated this is, B, how dang easy it is to defraud these programs. And as you point out all the time, these are the programs run by the it's not my problem people. So you pay into Medicare your whole life, and honestly, there are a lot of seniors that when they reach that age where they're eligible, it's a sigh of relief for them, and it's something they look forward to. Like it or not, it's a very popular program in that respect. What's not to like? Part of it's free. Part of it has very low premiums. Almost every doctor in America takes it. Every dang hospital does. So it's popular. You could certainly argue that we should have never started it. I get it. Back in the 60s, along with Medicaid. But it is popular. So I've said many times, you've heard me, Rhino, say the fraud's not on the patient side. Not saying that doesn't happen. Not as likely in Medicare, though. Medicaid, more likely. But it's on the provider side. So just 2 months ago, 2 healthcare executives convicted of $34 million Medicare Advantage fraud in Florida using deceptive tactics to take advantage of old people. They use friendlier language in the report of this issue that I'm reading. That's essentially what they do. You're taking advantage of old people. You know they are a little more gullible. They're not as versant with technology, and you take advantage of that. You abuse it. That's despicable. A lab owner also admitted guilt in $52 million of Medicare fraud involving unnecessary genetic tests ordered through illegal kickbacks. Unfreaking believable. And then 2 individuals arrested in Central Florida for fraudulently billing Medicaid for thousands of non-existent transportation trips. That's got to be one of the most common incidents of fraud, is this transportation coverage part of Medicaid. Well, oh, you don't have a way to get to the doctor, you have Medicaid, we'll come get you and take you. That's what this is, and we'll pay whomever handles the transportation services stole $65,000 from taxpayers. That's happening, I guarantee you, right here in the state of Mississippi, right now. Coming right back with Daniel Sparks. He's coming in 12:05.
Polyupa, Mississippi.
Check it out. Let's do this. The talk that keeps Mississippi talking. Middays with Gerard Gibert.
Let's get on with it.
On SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. The Dow now down 417 points. The NASDAQ 188. So the Bears fully in control of today's session. They just don't like what they see right now, at least, with respect to the events in the Middle East and serious concerns about destruction of oil and gas infrastructure, how that might affect the supply of oil and how that could drive the price up. And, you know, something that's unusual, Rhino, you don't see very often is the spread between Brent and West Texas, the two different grades and markets, if you will. Last I checked, that spread is about $20. Usually it's within a couple of dollars. So
it's down to about 10 now, but yeah, it's still bigger than usual.
That's a big spread, though. Down to about 10, so is West Texas still below 100? And in Brent, what, 108?
110.
Yeah, okay. So it was 118 a minute ago when I looked at it. That's very unusual, and I think that just shows you how volatile, more than anything, the market is. And we need...
Well, they're also likely watching what actually happens after the joint statement that was issued earlier this morning by European nations and Japan, because you had Britain, France, Germany, Italy, the Netherlands, and Japan put out a joint statement condemning in the strongest terms the recent attacks by Iran on unarmed commercial vessels in the Gulf and civilian infrastructure, and offering their support in safeguarding passage through the strait.
Okay. Well, that's so that brought the price of Brent down, which makes sense. The president, however, scolding Europe, was he not, for not really wanting to come in and help. Man, I'm all for the president. This is something pisses me off, too. We've been keeping that place intact for decades, since World War II, right? It's our military and our money that has kept Western Europe from being blown off the map.
Starting with the Berlin airlift and leading up all the way to today.
Correct. And so the president was right in his first term, and he's right now. You guys got to pay up. You got to quit spending your money on stupid social programs and take some of the reins here and bear the financial price and burden of securing the world. Don't just put that at our feet. He's absolutely right in this. And so you saw him, we're not so sure if we want to send in some ships there and our Navy and our other military assets to help out with this situation. You're more vulnerable than we are. We got a dang ocean between us. But we understand the security risk of Iran acquiring a nuclear weapon. You should be worried about that, too. You're too dang worried about your terrible free health care. It's the truth. It's absolutely the truth. That's where all their money goes.
He's pointing to a couple of different things with his criticism of NATO. One of them is, like you're saying, their unwillingness to pay their fair share of the NATO alliance. And the other is to shine a big spotlight on their unreadiness.
Yes.
I mean, the the British Royal Navy, for example, has more than half of their ships in dry dock for maintenance.
How could that happen?
Like France and Britain would have to team up to send enough to it for it actually to be a battle group.
Couldn't you not contend with respect to the UK, Britain? Isn't that like one of the oldest military forces of the modern world? I can't think of who goes before them, because Rome was eliminated. So, right, I'd have to point to them and the Greeks, but all that was eliminated and turned upside down. The Brits been at this a long dang time. How did they get in that condition? I'll tell you why and how. They opened the borders and they let half of Africa, and that's not a knock on Africa, it's just you open your borders and you've been essentially under siege by a bunch of people that don't care about England, don't even look or resemble England, and you haven't required them to assimilate. You don't even think you're in England when you're there. You've done that. And the second thing is, you've turned into a social justice activist, your military. Something that Biden tried to do here, and thank God Pete Hegseth and the president came in and got rid of all that crap day one and restored merit and power to the United States military with his executive orders day one. Should and rightfully did that. The UK hasn't. They've gone in the other direction, and that's why they're so dang weak. So what'd you say? How many of their ships are in dry dock?
Not even half.
Ridiculous for a country that's been around that long. Pay your damn money and help protect the world from these idiots that want to blow it up. We're coming right back after Fox News and SuperTalk News with Senator Daniel Sparks.
You gotta get your wish.
Your home. Get ready to go beyond the headlines and join a meaningful conversation with people from around the state. You're listening to MidDays with Gerard Gibert here on SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Hour 3, the afternoon portion of MidDays from the Element Wealth Studio on this
Friday Eve.
It's our great pleasure to welcome now Senator Daniel Sparks from the Mississippi State Senate, right in the middle of the rather trying time of the session. I'll just put it that way. I could have used some other words to describe it. I'm just going to say this is when both sides truly do have to come together to get stuff passed and onto the governor. And you're at the point in the session where the stuff that was pretty easy to get through, it's already over with, and now you're working on more, shall we say, controversial matters.
I think that's fair and that's accurate. The one thing I will say is that there are a lot of people working real hard at the Capitol right now, staff, people from Elbow, primarily the appropriators as we're getting toward the budget time, because the one constitutional responsibility we have is to pass a budget. And they are working diligently. They were there when I left last night.
Okay.
So the lack of work is not there. It's just simply, trying to get us to a point where there's agreements. We've overspent. If you look at all the bills we've passed back and forth, we exceed our revenue by a tremendous amount. So the appropriators have to take all the promises that other legislators have made on both ends of the hall. Let's be fair. And they have to say, we only have $7.4 billion to spend, and y'all sent us about $9 billion of new spending and tax credits. And that's when it becomes painful. It's not that anyone's issue is not important. It's just that we have a provision that requires us to have a balanced budget. So at the end of the day, they have to balance the budget.
Yeah, it's totally true. And I've expressed concerns here on the show that we've got a number of spending expense objects in our budget where we're seeing increases. Education, first and foremost, which consumes little over half of our total general fund dollars, and we're looking at a significant bump in teacher pay and assistant teacher pay, special ed teacher pay, community college pay. I could be leaving somebody out here, but all that's going to add up to $350 million, maybe even north of that, and not commensurate cuts elsewhere in the budget. And I think that's what has people concerned at the same time. And we don't know if this is a trend or not. You're aware of this, that our revenue declined slightly. We're still ahead of the projections of revenue year to date. But in a given month, I understand, does not certainly know that as a business person, does not make a trend. I taught myself and disciplined myself as I matured in business. Don't get too excited when things are going well, and don't get too down when they're not. The things have a way of evening out. But this is something we got to pay attention to.
We do, and you know, we work real hard to get a revenue estimate for the next year, and we ultimately adopt that number, and then actual spending is through the appropriations process. And we had about a $300 million spread last year, that $7.4 billion in revenue anticipated, $7.1 billion approximately in expenses. Now, Medicaid has come back and said they need a deficit appropriation of about $300 million, so we would be flush.
300? Well, I was 50.
Oh no, it's much higher. And you know, we did a deficit appropriation last year. I think the amount maybe was $35 million because we knew they were coming in with one. Now, what they asked for and what is appropriated may be two different issues.
Yeah.
But it's a legitimate, real number. You know, the FMAP numbers are going back, so it's part of the issue. In addition to that, of course, we'll have the next quarter point of the income tax reduction, which is about $100 million. And we're about $100 million over projection for the year. So right now, if the Medicaid number is truly $300 million, and we're going to have $100 million less in income tax revenue next year, and we made about $100 million more this year than we thought we would, we're flush. Yeah. We're even, and that's before any of the increases. So that's why these guys are meeting late at night, well into the night, because everyone is arguing for their increase. Sure. In the aggregate, we can't take all these increases, whatever it is, and we've had the game of I'll promise more than the next guy, whether it's to teachers or whether it's to first responders or whatever it is. But the serious conversations that take place behind the scenes are what can we actually do and still balance the budget.
Yeah. So let's break that down, Senator, for our audience. Explain to the folks what a deficit appropriation is.
In a given year, you know, we appropriate a certain sum of money to these agencies, Medicaid, to the Department of Corrections, but there are times that a spending issue comes up that we did not anticipate. Something costs more. You know, you have the ice storm. You have costs that are unforeseen, and so they come in when we come in January and say, hey, looking at last year's budget, we're going to overspend that by about $20 million, so we need a $20 million deficit appropriation. Well, that means we're basically taking money that we didn't think we were going to spend last year, and we're going ahead and giving them money. They're not talking about next year's budget.
Right.
They're talking about what it cost last year.
Yeah, to cover excessive expenses or expenses that exceeded our budget and what was appropriated, essentially.
That's correct.
And so, according to my quick math there, that sounds like we're like breaking even.
That's about what it looks like, and that's why, again, people have great ideas. They have great pieces of legislation, wonderful programs that actually work. The issue that we have, and for years we made light of tax and spend Democrats. That makes sense. Tax you more so I can spend more.
Sure.
Look to New York. Look, you know, Kathy Hochul
we
up
just
there.
got through talking about
it. Screaming about, can we get those people back from Florida? Please
we
come
just
back.
played tape of her.
And she literally said, we know they've gone down there because it's a more advantageous tax environment. So
right.
the income tax elimination is a good thing for the state of Mississippi, but it has real consequences. But a tax and spend Democrat that we used to say is not as bad as a tax cut and spend Republican, because that's called Kansas. And because Kansas did it all in 1 year, they saw the immediate impact of it. If we think we can do the same thing Kansas did, you know, either you've got to find more revenue, and we have great economic development in the state. Everybody is aware of that, and I applaud the governor's office and the legislators prior to me who did some great investment in site work development, in getting good regulatory environment. Yes, we have economic development, but it is a revenue and expense issue. And if you keep raising your expenses, not that they're not worthy. See,
sure.
It's not. Some people say Isn't the first responder community worth it? Aren't teachers worth it? Yes.
It's not the issue.
We'll never pay them what they're worth.
It's an issue of affordability.
It's what you can afford. Yeah. So we don't have the ability of the federal government to print money, so it literally has to balance the budget. So I do encourage my colleagues, and I want to do the same thing, find something to cut. I'm not sure the last time I recall somebody walking to the well and saying, this is actually a cut of X number of dollars. So one of the things I'm trying to do this year with additional revenue, and I've talked with Chairman Hobson about this, is our intervention courts. We spend about $9 million. Well, the thing about intervention courts, primarily felony drug courts, it costs us $1,200, $1,400 per participant to have somebody in intervention court. It costs us $35,000 or more per year to put them in MDOC custody. So as a math guy, I know that that's better. Plus the outcomes are better. Our intervention courts have shown that they do good work. The problem is that's still $9 million out of the budget. Opioid settlement funds. We have this opioid settlement. So that's new money, new source of revenue. Yeah. Now here come the hands that want it. And we don't do a good job of picking where this money goes so often. We know the intervention court works. I want the money to go there. Not only could we potentially plus up to have more people that cost the state $1,200 a year instead of $35,000 a year, we actually could see that growth would be beneficial to the way our courts are running. But here comes everybody else. And when we draw a program up in the state of Mississippi, and certainly at the federal government level, the people trying to scam us are smarter than the people drawing up the program.
No doubt.
They have us beat before we get there. And,
100%.
And we have to watch that. So sometimes when groups come in and say, we do great work. Yes, you do. But the problem is, are we being good stewards? Are we letting money flitter away? Well, when you're flush, when you're even, you have to be paying more attention. If I've got a little extra money in my pocket, I might go to a little more expensive restaurant. I might order a little more expensive dish. We get it in our families. But as a state, we have to say, this is a good program. We need to fund it. This program's not performing. We need to do something different. Funding for IHL. I went to the IHL meeting today to listen to their presentation about a new funding formula. We want performance funding. They want another allocation formula. It's not going to work. I listened to the whole presentation. I listened to the group present it prior. I went to that meeting for a reason. I wanted to hear what questions were asked. I wanted to hear the responses. We spend a tremendous amount of money, and it's all about the return on investment. We've never really paid attention to that. What does it mean to get a college degree in the state of Mississippi? Everybody, would tell us, oh, that's good. That's a good thing. It's good if it's measurable. And measurable means it's a positive return on my investment of time and money. We're trying, but there's pushback. Everybody wants home rule when it comes to how to spend their money.
100%. We got Senator Daniel Sparks in the Element Wealth studio. We're coming right back. Stay with us.
I know that. Middays with Gerard Gibert. It is on SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays, the Element Wealth Studio. We are hosting Senator Daniel Sparks today, and I will say this about the senator when even in his presence is that if you want to have an engaging discussion about these numbers, and you cannot run a state budget without truly digging in and analyzing and processing and thinking through the numbers, that's the business aspect of running a state government. This is a man you want to talk to, and I appreciate you being willing to spend a lot of time digging into all these details. And full disclosure, the senator and I have numerous engaging discussions offline as well about this. I like to speak that language as well, but I appreciate you doing that. and you don't mince words, and I appreciate that as well. And that's what we got to do, Senator. You can't solve problems unless we frame them with facts.
Well, that's very fair, and I appreciate it. And I spoke to a group of first responders yesterday talking about the pension plan, and I met with the entire caucus of first responders last week. And I had one guy pull me aside, and he said, I don't know who you are. I've never met you, didn't know your name, but I appreciate you had the backbone to walk in here and not tell us what we wanted to hear. And I think it's unfair if I come in and paint you a different picture than what reality is. But I guess, Gerard, and I appreciate it's very kind for you to say that, but I think, Dean Wilder at the Ole Miss Accountancy School maybe gets a little credit for some of that. I've got an accounting degree 100%. And a master's in tax from there, and I know you do as well.
His predecessors in mine.
It is important to do that, but then we also have to articulate it to our constituents. We can't say, "Oh, this is what the math says," and I'm sorry. No, you've got to listen to them.
You've got to relate it.
Whether it's Mark Nichols or Jimmy Davis or any of the rest of them.
Old Ole Miss accounting professors, by the way.
They did a fine job.
Yep.
But it does matter. And just, for instance, with PERS, one of the first things that I always try to remind people is no money's ever been taken out. Because sometimes citizenry will say, oh, it's like Social Security, if they'll just put the money back. No money's ever been taken out. The other thing I reminded the group yesterday we spoke with, and they've been great, the leaders of those first responder organizations, is that PERS was supposed to be prepaid. To understand how much we messed up PERS, it's supposed to be my contribution and the contribution from the employer plus investment growth during the amount of time that I work. The money's there to pay me. It's not a pyramid scheme. The way some people want to run it, they'll say if we go hire a bunch more people, things will get better. That's not how a prepaid system works.
Right.
The reason that we're having to pay off tiers 1 through 4 the way that we are is because a prior legislature repeatedly gave benefits which are politically advantageous, who did not pay for them, and they left it for us. And now we have people that want to do the exact same thing. They want to gift benefits. They want to give benefits retroactively, but not actually pay for it. And I can't do that. I'm not going to do that to the next generation, because if we didn't have the PERS liability we have today, we wouldn't be at 19.9% contribution. State employees and city and county employees could get pay raises immediately because it wouldn't be putting it all in the retirement system. So it is a system that we've been boxed into, but I'm going to keep my promise to tiers 1 through 4 to pay them what we owe them, and we're going to do the best we can going forward with what we can afford.
Okay. And it's also fair to say, you referencing prior legislatures and the actions they took that I think largely created this problem, that the ratio back then of active contributing members to retirees was reasonable.
It was, and but yet still, if it's prepaid.
Oh, I get it. I'm just saying that we were in good shape until they said, well, let's just keep adding on these additional.
We were 90+% funded.
Exactly.
That's frustrating.
That's the point.
But the math matters, and again, taking the time to talk with your constituents and express things, whether it's intervention courts, whether it's this other thing. But it's big picture issues.
Yeah.
And I will tell you, we get so caught up in the social media clicks that distract us. The big ticket issues is, for instance, and I'll tell you, probably the most underpaid state employee we have is Dr. Courtney Taylor at Accelerate Mississippi.
She's
not
awesome.
Only because of the job she's doing, and she does these same things. There's no bull in her. She's straightforward. She knows the numbers. But she's the person that came back from a conference in D.C. talking about workforce. And she pulled me aside, and we talked about the workforce issues, and I chair that committee. But she told me about an issue with the SNAP error rate. Never realized this was going on. One big, beautiful bill. There's accountability. I'm all for that. We're barreling toward $40 trillion in debt. The federal government has got to be more accountable. And so she told me. So I brought this up in a JLBC meeting, a Joint Legislative Budget meeting in September, and DHS said, if we don't fix this issue, it'll cost $128 million. I brought it up in October in a one-door policy meeting. I brought it up to the executive branch because this is an executive branch agency, DHS.
Yeah.
Spoke with the agency. We addressed it with legislation. That legislation didn't make it across the finish line. I had a second piece of legislation. We did it. It's $128 million, Gerard, and it's because she cared enough to tell me that we were able to do the groundwork, but then we didn't get it across the finish line. I can tell you, when you say it looks like we're about even in our budget, We're not even if we get a bill from the federal government next year for $128 million.
Well, I didn't add that to the list.
Yeah, so that would put us in arrears. So here comes a deficit appropriation from DHS for $128 million. And I'll tell you, today at that IHL meeting, Dr. Luann Woodward presented on something. And when you talk about big picture, talking about a comprehensive cancer center at the University of Mississippi Medical Center, we have the worst cancer outcomes in the nation.
Yep.
But if you are a black male living in the Delta, we have the worst cancer outcomes in the world.
I didn't know that.
And they are targeting this. They're trying to get the national designation. This is going to cost $250 to $300 million. Mm-hmm. And they're not walking over with their hand out for $250 or $300 million. They've already raised $100 of this money.
Wow.
But yeah, they do want the state to participate. This would be game-changing. People wouldn't have to drive to MD Anderson. People wouldn't have to drive to Birmingham. We could treat our own people here. But I'm going to tell you, that 128 just rung in my ears today because that's more than what UMMC is asking for. Now, that's going to be an annual 128 if we don't get it fixed. But how about let's just fix it this year and go ahead and take the 128 we're going to burn and just give $100 to UMMC, and let's get this cancer center built so that can be a legacy.
What an asset that would be.
If my legacy is throwing away $128 million a year, take my picture off the wall.
Unbelievable. All right, so let's talk about this SNAP, the food stamps program error rate. This is new policy that came down in the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, also known as the Working Families Tax Cuts Act, passed into law, signed by President Trump July 4th of last year. And this is the first time ever the federal government has said to the states, hey, if you have an error rate within a certain range, you're not only responsible as you are now for part of the administration of the program, you're going to have to kick in some money to cover some of the benefits based on your error rate. 3 tiers. We're in the middle tier. No, we're in the top tier.
We're in
top
the 15%
tier now.
bracket.
That's right. So you've got to pay 15%. If your error rate's north of 10%, you got to cover 15% of the benefits. That's a bunch of money, and I think our error rate's 11%, 10 and change.
We were 10.69. There's 2 things that we can do. One is we change from change reporting to simplified reporting. And the simple thing about that to understand is there's 49 other states in this union, and none of them use change reporting. So that was the simple thing that I did, was just say, let's use the same reporting methodology that other states use. But we didn't stop there. Working with Chairman DeWeese and Senator Mike Thompson, we said, you're going to use a third-party income verification system. Like, we're going to get better. Technology exists today to do this.
Sure.
I appreciate that the federal government is looking at all of the waste, fraud, and abuse across the country and saying, you know what? If y'all want to keep just being erroneous, you're fixing to pay for some of it. I think that's fair.
Sure.
I think that's a good idea. But those 2 pieces is what we were trying to do. One piece may not make it across the finish line, and I think I told you this prior on your show. I was in D.C. in December. I went to Senator Hyde Smith, personally told her about this issue, and I said, Senator, if we don't get this fixed, I will be back begging you to help us any way you can to intervene, because Senator Murkowski got Alaska exempted for 2 years.
Right.
But it's $128 million. It is, I mean, it's just real.
So, all right, so what are we doing? We have some legislation to address this, to hire, I think, some third parties to help us with the income verification. Where are we on that?
That's HB 1640. I think that's for concurrence. Again, I can't thank Chairman DeWeese and the House anymore just for helping and being right there and being in the middle of this. He understands the issue. The issue about whether we were changed or simplified reporting, there's been some pushback to that that yet to be explained, the justification for it. But the end result is going to be, I don't think income verification software in and of itself will pull us below the error rate in this year, because we're already halfway through the program year.
Okay.
And the reason the legislation where we were going from change to simplified reporting would go back to October is that's the start of the program year. All we're trying to do is keep $128 million in the general revenue so that we can do the things that we need to do. But it is not less accountable. It's more accountable when we bring in constant monitoring, AI technology. We want to get it right. We want to get it right in the state of Mississippi, because the right thing to do is get it right, not just because there's an error rate and a penalty. But since there is a penalty, I think we better get it right.
Well, as you know, some folks have expressed concerns about the third party that DHS is considering engagement. for engagement for this project. Can you talk about that on the other side?
I'll be glad to.
All right, we got Senator Daniel Sparks in the Element Wealth studio.
From the city.
Come on.
Middays with Gerard Gibert.
All right, we are back.
On SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Ziggy Stardust, the great David Bowie, bumping us into this segment. We are visiting with Senator Daniel Sparks in the Element Wealth studio. So, Senator, on the C Spire text line, Representative Price Wallace says, Senator Sparks is top shelf. Appreciate that, Representative Price Wallace, and Representative Wallace is top shelf as well. We appreciate his service to the state of Mississippi and his district. But we were talking before we went to break there about the risk that Mississippi has of not addressing its error rate in administration of its food stamps SNAP program, Supplemental Nutrition Program. And in the past, that's just been a problem, but now it's going to be a financial problem. There are financial consequences because the federal government says, hey, states, if you don't get your act together here, you're going to have to send some money back our way because they cover, it's their program. It's funded by the federal government. It's not actually funded, not like Medicaid where there's a joint funding mechanism. We administer the program. And something else, Senator, you're aware of, I don't know what the cost of that this is, but in the past that's been, a 50-50 cost sharing of the administration, and that's changing as well to 75% on our part now, right?
That's correct, and I believe they asked for $15 million for that piece, so it's certainly not
a little more manageable.
It's not as large as 128.
Well, what are we going to do about this 128? Before we went to break, I said there's some folks that are concerned that the third party that DHS is looking to contract with to help us with this problem and the income verification and just get a hold of our error rate. The concerns about them maybe also being involved in sort of pushing more people into receiving welfare under the program.
Well, there are circumstances when you're confused and there's circumstances when you're dead wrong. They may be both, because if you go back and watch the one-door policy hearing at 1 hour and 17 minutes and about 30 seconds, DHS starts talking about the 5 free pilot programs that people were offering to help us get our rate down.
Okay.
And the thing that blew up a couple of days ago in some circles on social media is one of these 5 free pilots. And we didn't approve that. We didn't authorize that. That's a DHS decision. There was some company that does data analytics that apparently has left-leaning pushes and causes. That has nothing to do with the 1640, HB 1640, which is to hire a third-party income verification person. The confusion may come in thinking that some of these free pilots, we might hire them to do income verification. Well, first of all, if you have a goal to do income verification, that's math.
Sure.
That's not partisan. The second issue is 1640 hadn't even become law, and Chairman DeWeese, Senator Thompson, and myself put our language in there. We didn't even put the language the department wanted because I didn't like the fact that they were going to go hire multiple vendors to try to do this.
Okay.
We narrowed it down to say go hire the right vendor the first time. There are people who do this on a national level. There are other states that do this. We're not playing games with this because we don't have time. October 25 was the starting of the measuring year. So we have to do it now. And folks are just confused. They mean well.
Okay.
I don't want people expanding programs. And I'm going to be honest with you, if anybody in that chamber is more concerned about the dollars and cents and where money is wasted, where fraud is, where abuse is, I'd like to think I try to stay as involved as anybody out there.
Okay.
And I can go ahead and tell you, in the 2027 elections, there's not going to be a more important position down ballot than the state auditor, because that's who is going to help the state of Mississippi to address the issues when the federal government does this in the next program. You don't think income verification isn't coming to Medicaid?
Oh, of course it is.
Just hide and watch. You don't think it's coming to MDES? I told every one of those cabinet heads since August that you might as well prepare for the same thing that SNAP is going through right now, because we're broke. We're $39 trillion broke. And if you don't think that's not going to trickle down to the state of Mississippi, so the goal is, let's not waste $1 in the state of Mississippi. Let's look at all of our programs, and especially if we have a downturn in revenue, because we have an obligation, the next person that sits in the governor's mansion will have to do what prior governors have done. Late in a fiscal year, they'll have to go to a state agency and say, I know you were appropriated this much, but I'm cutting everybody 10%.
Yeah.
And that's the way the state of Mississippi works. We're not going to go broke. We have a full rainy day fund. That's good. The efforts we've made to reform PERS, we've paid down bond indebtedness. Our bond rating just went from negative to stable. That means we can borrow money at some point in the future at a lower rate, but we have paid off almost $2 billion of debt. I can tell you, this legislature has tried to prepare for the years of lean that often follow the years of fat.
It's one of the bright spots, no doubt, and that was announced a couple of days ago, our bond rating improvement. The state treasurer, David McRae, the governor, making that announcement. And that is something we should also point out as part of our budget, is that we are reducing the principal of the debt we currently have on the books, and thus the interest cost in our general fund budget. It is one of the areas that it's actually going down, or will go down. It's a steady stream of payments right now, but we're not adding debt, so we're effectively in the future looking at that line item shrinking, and we're going to need it, I think, in our budget with spending happening elsewhere. But this seems to be common sense, straightforward program. I don't understand why we don't have super robust tools today, Senator, to verify income for Medicaid. That's the largest program in the state. And that costs state dollars.
Well, when the governor signs House Bill 1640, if it makes it to his desk, we will immediately move forward to get an income verification system for SNAP. When we see their performance, you can bet you I'll push to bring it across the board. And one of the things that I think is most important, and you brought this up, when people ask me how I'm funding PERS reforms, I can tell you how the Senate has proposed to buy down from 35 years to 30 years in Tier 5. We paid for it with ORP reform last year.
Optional retirement program.
You want to know how I'm going to pay $50 million a year for 10 years? Our bond payments go down because of what we've done. The interest and principal allow us to do that, because what is a bond payment? It's a payment on debt.
We're retiring debt, and as we retire debt, then the principal and interest decreases.
That's right. So what do I do with that money? I look at the next debt. What's that debt? It's PERS.
Yeah.
So all we're doing is paying that liability with those dollars. And I don't have to ask Chairman Harkins or Chairman Hobson for more money to go do it. So we've been very
just shifting where it's used. Instead of paying this legacy debt, we're now tackling the PERS program, which is a future problem, if you will, and we're trying to address that and cut our future expense associated with solving that problem.
That's exactly right. So I'm very appreciative of both ends of the legislature in working with me for 7 years. And, the first 3 or 4, you're just learning how to get something done.
Okay.
But I appreciate, even though it's a struggle sometimes, I appreciate the thought that goes into it. And just like Price Wallace, excellent individual, and so many people in that legislature are trying to do the right thing. But when it comes to certain specific items, I don't know much about public health. I don't know much about I'm not on those committees. But when it comes to numbers and balancing budgets and finding fraud and finding waste and finding abuse, I'd like to be like a bloodhound.
Okay.
I really want people to understand every dollar I can save is a dollar that we can put towards something that's important.
Makes sense. All right, before you go, talk to us about the different measures concerning pharmacy benefit manager reform. I know that's a deep and wide discussion, but your take on that, the Senate amended it. Some senators opposed it.
One of the most complex issues in the state of Mississippi and in the United States, the pharmacy benefit managers, once they became vertically integrated, they negotiate with manufacturers of drugs. Everybody talks about drug manufacturers being the bad guy. the PBMs go to them and say, do you want to be on our formulary? Do you want to sell to our customers? If so, we want this much in a rebate. So therefore the price goes up. And you don't blame the manufacturer for that. The PBM said, if you want to get on the list, you're going to give me this much money back. Then it trickles down, and they pay different rates to independent pharmacies than they pay to their own CVS Caremark, for instance, vertically integrated. The PBMs control 60 to 80% of that pharmacy market. The real issue comes when members of our business community, and our friend Russ Latino made a post today, and he's not wrong in what he said. Do you know how embarrassing it is for me to sit down in front of somebody from Ingalls or Ergon or any of these other successful Mississippi companies who negotiate billions of dollars of contracts and have forgotten more than I know? But when I look at them and say, I think you're getting hoodooed, and the only way we can find out that you're getting hoodooed is transparency and all these other things. We've been looking for transparency for 4 years. This year, there's a dispensing fee that's in it. I'm not a big fan of price floors and price caps. I'm also not a big fan of steering, telling people you can't go to the independent pharmacist. So those are real issues of problem. At the end of the day, I think businesses operate and the market operates on certainty. And businesses know the certain costs. The uncertainty of any reform in PBM is what's brought them to the table. And I respect them, and it's a very difficult vote. But the PBMs, if they're not reined in, will destroy the drug price issues in the country. When you're vertically integrated, it's a problem. It's a monopoly, and we don't have the perfect solution.
Okay. No, I don't think there is a perfect solution. And I still have concerns that this is actually going to cause the price of prescription drugs, whatever we do, to go down. That's what the people want.
And the NADAC Plus model has been used in other states. Other states have said there are benefits. I trust our businesses if they say, we think you're wrong.
We got it. Senator Daniel Sparks, thanks for coming in.
Hey, this is Bob just calling.
Middays with Gerard Gibert.
What? This is so
awesome. On SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays from the Element Well studio. So, just looking at something related to the pharmacy benefit manager issue posted not too long ago by Senator Angela Hill concerning West Virginia. It's just a comparison of 23, 24, 25. And this is how rates went down in insurance once the rebates were passed through, required to be passed through from the pharmacy benefit managers. So it's just a really, really super complicated matter. And I'll also share this. This is what I think, Rhino, honestly, is at the core of this. There ain't no money in this. And so this is every piece of the industry, of the complex ecosystem, trying to figure out a way to make money in healthcare. You look at Cigna, which just reported its quarterly results. And I looked at this, and Representative Becky Curry posted something about that, and I get it. She said, hey, look, Cigna, big vertically integrated insurer, pharmacy benefit manager, they had record profit last year, $5.6 billion. Their top line was $250 billion. So that's less than Kroger's margin. How much should they make? And who determines that? The point I'm making is they work through all these gimmicks and schemes and make everything so dang complicated to try to put dollars on the bottom line. And that's what makes this hard. And I honestly think it's to a great extent, Rhino, you talk about it all the time, it's government's intervention in it that's now created all this chaos and distorted and perverted it to the point where everybody's trying to figure out a way to, how do I survive this nonsense? So that's not an unreasonable amount of profit. At the end of the day, no matter what all the crazy schemes are to get to that point, that's not unreasonable. In fact, it's terrible. 3% net operating income. NVIDIA was 60 last quarter. 60! Yesterday, you probably saw it, Micron had earnings. Blowout. By the way, the investors are selling it off today. Same old thing. We don't think you can continue with that, though their guidance was like through the roof. They've said, we can't make enough RAM to meet. You saw that. We can't make enough memory to meet demand. What a good position that is. And a couple of days ago, Jensen Huang, the CEO of NVIDIA, said, yeah, we got $1 trillion in the pipeline. Heck, it seems like it was yesterday I was talking about them doing $120 billion in a year. He says it's $1 trillion. I'm telling you, watch next year, they're going to make $200 billion. Cigna made $5 billion. Now, I don't know. When government gets involved, it screws crap up. That's the takeaway here. So here's what I want. I want a system that allows the independent pharmacist to be viable. I think they serve a valuable purpose, especially in a rural state like this. But I also want one that doesn't increase costs on employers. Maybe I'm looking for something that doesn't exist. And one that doesn't increase costs on we consumers. And those of us who buy insurance, buy these goods and services, in this case healthcare and pharmaceuticals. Surely there's a model out there that we can achieve this. And I would like to hear from those who could help us understand how we get there and what a strategy is and a plan for that. It's just a little shocking to me that we have legislation that passed the House, goes down to the Senate, gets an amendment, and the House says the independent pharmacists like what we have, and the Senate says, no, they don't. They wanted to put this amendment in there. I don't know what the truth is at this point. Surely we can figure out an environment that works for everybody. You know what makes it hard, of course, is government involvement. That's what makes it hard, as it makes everything hard when it comes to...
Because everybody knows that prostitution is the world's oldest profession, but in the top 5 for the oldest is skimming off the top from the government.
That's
purse.
Exactly right. That's 100% right. So, but I appreciate all the legislators that are involved in this and all those from the pharmacists that are involved. I talked to our content director this morning about getting another guest on the program, an additional guest. We had a great independent pharmacist on last week from Laurel. Get somebody else in addition to that to just add to that perspective, and just try to get down to the bottom of this issue with all the facts across all the various perspectives. We're out of here today. Back with you tomorrow. Stay safe and God bless.
SuperTalk Mississippi Media Production.